Last August, I hiked the John Muir Trail, and I want to do a quick video on how I planned my trip. Alright, the first hurdle in hiking the JMT is the permit process. I'm not going to go in depth here since there are a lot of videos out there on this process, but I would recommend learning as much as you can so you can provide yourself with the most options that will work for you. I'll just say that any section of the trail that you're able to do will be beautiful. And if you're intent on doing the entire thing, the more flexibility that you have, the higher the chances of getting a permit. Just be persistent in your efforts. Once you get a permit, you'll still need a little bit of luck. In September of 2021, I had a permit that was canceled days before my hike due to wildfires. Luckily, Yosemite was still open, so I did a big loop through the park and had an absolutely incredible time. This year, 2023, being a record snow year, I'm sure there are a lot of hikers who had to cancel their June or early July permits due to snow. So at the time most people get their permits, there's no telling what type of snow year it will be and what the summer will hold. One of the many great things about the JMT is the public transportation. It's relatively easy and inexpensive to get yourself from the airport and to the trail. If you have a traditional Happy Isles to Mount Whitney permit, I would recommend flying into Fresno because it connects directly to the Yards bus. The Yards bus will take you directly into Yosemite Valley where you can pick up your permit and start your hike. Or you can spend a night in the backpackers campground and start your hike the following day. Once you finish your hike and are at Whitney Portal, it's an easy hitch into the closest town of Lone Pine. The Eastern Sierra Transit connects directly from Lone Pine to the Reno airport. The only catch here is that the Eastern Sierra Transit does not run on Sundays, so plan your hike around that. As a recap, I would fly into Fresno and take the Yards bus into Yosemite. After finishing the trail, I would take the Eastern Sierra Transit bus out of Lone Pine and fly out of Reno. If you don't have a traditional Happy Isles to Mount Whitney permit or are doing the trail northbound, I think you would still use at least some, if not all, of the services that I listed here. Another great thing about the JMT was the resupply options. The first resupply option coming out of Yosemite Valley is in Tuolumne Meadows. There they have a post office and a store. It's worth it to stop at the store, and for me it was also worth it to send myself a resupply package there. You can get a resupply package there from anywhere from $15 to $25, and it saves you from carrying several pounds of food out of the valley. From here, the resupply options get a little bit more remote, and with that, a little bit more expensive. The next option is Red's Meadow, which I would again suggest stopping at. Red's Meadow is barely off the trail and they have a small restaurant and store. There's a separate area where there is a backpacker's campsite within a car campground. The third resupply option is Vermilion Valley Resort, or VVR. I would highly recommend stopping there. VVR is around 7 miles off trail. However, there is a lake, and when the water levels are high enough, they have a ferry that runs and can transport you from the trail to VVR. Once there, this place is everything a hiker could want. They have a resupply service, a restaurant, store, and free camping. They also have Wi-Fi for a fee, which for me was great because I was able to connect to my family who I hadn't talked to in a few days. The final resupply stop is Muir Trail Ranch. They are about a mile off trail and their services are mostly limited to resupply packages, although they do have nearby camping and hot springs. This is the only resupply stop I did not make out of the 4 I mentioned. After this, the resupply options are either much more time consuming or much more expensive, as any options are several miles off trail. For me, with my limited time, this was not an option, so I carried about 7 days worth of food from VVR. As a recap, I did my resupplies at Tuolumne Meadows Post Office and VVR, and I also stopped at Red's Meadow for a few cold beverages and breakfast in the morning. As far as a map, I do believe it's important to carry a hard copy map in case of a technology failure, but I honestly didn't use mine throughout the entire trip. Instead, I used the Far Out app on my phone. One of the biggest advantages to this app is the comments section. Hikers can leave comments which can be helpful to see if a water source is flowing or not and whether it's good or bad water. Hikers can also comment on campsites or any other landmarks that are listed on the app. The last thing I'll touch on is gear and conditioning. I would recommend doing research and getting to know your gear as much as possible before the trail. The more dialed in you have both your gear and conditioning, the more you'll be able to relax and enjoy your hike. If you're carrying unnecessary items or things that don't work, it's only going to take away from your enjoyment. On the other side of the spectrum, it's also important to have the things that you'll actually need. The same is true for the food that you bring. You want to bring foods that are calorie dense so you can maximize the space in your bear canister, but you also want food that you'll at least somewhat enjoy so you're able to get it down. The first few days can often be difficult to eat for many hikers, but it's important to get something down. I did a video of the gear I brought on trail that I'll link here, and I also made daily videos of my hike. Because of the great transportation and resupply options, in my opinion, this trail can be completed within 12 to 13 days, depending on your gear and level of fitness. I was only able to get 2 weeks off of work, so that was the time frame I hiked in. Obviously, I would always enjoy more time in the Sierra, but I was able to thoroughly enjoy my hike within that limited time frame. And I think doing it in a shorter time frame is certainly better than not doing it at all. But if you have a month or 2 or 3, I would recommend taking as much time as you possibly can out there. Alright, well that's all I have for now. If you're lucky enough to find yourself out on the John Muir Trail, you'll see some of the most incredible things you've ever seen, and it's an experience that you'll remember for the rest of your life. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you out on the trail.